Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
And welcome to NHL Wraparound for February 24th, 2025. Vic Morren, along with my good friend Neil Smith. And shortly, we will be joined by the president of hockey operations and general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets, Don Waddell. But first, 3 things you need to pay attention to, brought to you by UBS Financial Services, Inc. Number 1, the Washington Capitals were the only team not to have a player originally selected for the Four Nations Faceoff. How would they respond? They outscore Pittsburgh and Edmonton by a combined total of 15-6 Saturday and Sunday. 7 different goal scorers and 15 players with points against Pittsburgh. Neil, none of them was named Alex Ovechkin.
No, none of them but in that game, but
on Sunday, hat trick. Yes, an empty netter was included in this, but let's all go positive here. 29 on the season, 882 for his career, 13 from Wayne Gretzky's record, 13 will surpass the record, 25 games remaining, and he's scoring at .71 goals per game. I was awful at math, but even I know he is on a pace to pass Gretz this year.
He is. However, the games will get tougher as the season comes down to the wire, and it's going to be tight. He could do it, because don't ever count him out of doing anything. So I wouldn't ever bet against Ovechkin.
And just before we move on, in Sunday's game against the Oilers, 6 Capitals with multiple points in that game. The balance of scoring that this club has shown throughout this season is staggering.
It is. And I mean, every time I watch them, I'm just more and more in awe that they have turned this organization, this hockey team, from what they were last season that just squeaked into the playoffs by the skin of their teeth, only to be eliminated 4 straight by the Rangers, into now a team that's fighting for the President's Trophy and first overall.
Point number 2, flip side. Florida Panthers had the most players at the Four Nations Faceoff, 8. They come out of the gate with a relatively flat 2-1 loss to Seattle, and a couple of other powerhouses struggling. The Edmonton Oilers lost 6-3 in Philadelphia, 7-3 in Washington, as we just noted. Chris Knobloch really calling his team out on poor puck management, poor gap control, and a poor start for the Oilers and for the Colorado Avalanche, who ran into 2 Four Nation Faceoff goaltenders in UC Saros, losing in Nashville 2-1 Saturday, and then hero Jordan Binnington 3-1 in St. Louis on Sunday.
And, you know, the Edmonton Oilers, going back to them, they had not lost a game by 4 goals since October. So, they've got some work to do to pull everything back together again. Even for me, watching 97 McDavid, which you can't help but want to watch, he didn't look the same to me as he normally does. Draisaitl, yes, because Draisaitl wasn't in the tournament. Draisaitl looked good, but McDavid didn't look the same. I'm sure he's going to get back to his game, but he doesn't seem to be at it right now.
And that there's that emotional high that he comes off having scored the tournament-winning goal. Before we move to point number 3, are you as concerned with Colorado?
I'm concerned with them missing the playoffs and not being able to.
No, just, 2 goals in the 2 games over the weekend against 2 clubs currently out of playoff position.
Yeah, I was surprised at them. But Colorado, is a team that goes up and down, right? I mean, they can go on these huge winning streaks and then they can go on some losing streaks. And then when you think that they're going to beat somebody, they lose. They've been inconsistent all season. They're going to make the playoffs. They're too good not to, as we know. But that was 2 losses that I'm sure they'd like to have back against 2 teams that are not in playoff position.
Point number 3, the ratings for the Four Nations final game are in. 9.3 million on ESPN with a peak number of 10.4 million. Sportsnet in Canada, 10.7 million. 20 million people watched the final game in North America. And whether it was the great hockey, the intensity, the geopolitical surroundings to this, what a boom for hockey. And the 4 games on ESPN averaged 4.3 million. So this is nothing but good news going forward. And I'll be interested to see how sustainable this is for the balance of the regular season and the playoffs.
Absolutely. And of course, it caught everybody's imagination. I mean, I know that going into this thing, taking the break, I wasn't that interested in it. And then when you saw how the quality of the games, you had to be interested in it. You couldn't not be interested in what was going on.
For sure. Spectacular. And let's just hope it continues for both ESPN/ABC and TNT. And these have been 3 things you need to pay attention to, brought to you by UBS Financial Services, Inc.
Welcome to NHL Wraparound again. Don Waddell, President of Hockey Operations, General Manager now of the Columbus Blue Jackets this season. Last time, Donnie, you were on with us. You're with the Carolina Hurricanes, and we were talking about them, and you're having a successful season, and now you're having a successful season with the Columbus Blue Jackets. So welcome back with a different logo.
A different logo, but happy to be back and happy to have a great conversation with you guys.
Well, we really appreciate it. And I think I've said this to you before, that I think all of us somewhere inside are cheering for the Columbus Blue Jackets after what happened in the late summer. And also then other black clouds that seem to follow the team. But especially with the Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Gaudreau situation. I know Vic and I have said this on this show many times that we're cheering for you guys because everybody's heartbroken by what happened in the offseason.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. I can't say enough about our leadership with our hockey club, of how they've come together as a group. And, as I said, we're never going to forget about Johnny. He's in our lives every day. But the guys know when they step on the ice, they have to play hockey. And Johnny wants to play hockey. Meredith said it at the funeral. She said it here on the ice opening night. Johnny would want you to play hockey. I want you to play hockey, go play hockey. So, when you get statements like that from Meredith, who's such a strong person, it's really rallied the guys, and they've really stuck together this year to be able to, through some injuries and other things that have happened, the ups and downs, be able to still be in a contention for a playoff spot.
I did my homework before you came on, Don, something I didn't do a lot of at Western Michigan, but last year you ended the season after 82 games, 27 wins. This year, after 57 games, you've already got 27 wins. You've got the same amount of wins right now that you had at the end of last season. Last season, you lost 43 times. This year, you've only lost 22, obviously. And you're only 4 points with 25 games to go. You're only 4 points behind what you had all last season. So it's really been, you can either say that last year was a horrible year or this year has been a fabulous year, but the difference in the 2 seasons is remarkable.
Yeah, no, we're very fortunate. Last year I wasn't here, so I can't speak of how things went. But a lot of young players, and we all know it takes time for them to step up and take on their own identity in the NHL. And I go back to our leadership group. Boone Jenner's our captain. He gets hurt first day before the season started. He's still around, traveled with us a lot of times during the year. But guys like Zach Werenski, Sean Monahan, Matthew Olivier, these guys have really stepped up. And, if I'm a player like Adam Vintilli, that's second year in the league, playing behind Monahan, watching how Monahan trains every day for practice, games, as a true professional, I'm going to learn something from that, which I certainly did. Monahan goes out until he jumps in that spot and hasn't missed a beat. So, as much as you have good young players, you also have to have the presence of some veterans to show them the way. Again, don't know exactly what happened last year. Can only deal with what we know this year. And the coaching staff with Dean Everson has done a great job for us. But I really give the credit to the locker room, how these guys have responded to everything that's happened to us and how they've stuck together. I kept waiting halfway through the year. Was the bubble going to burst? But after 57 games, we're still rolling right along.
Don, it almost appears that the club has been somewhat galvanized by this tragedy, and they are playing with an incredible sense of purpose this year. But can you take us back to the process that you and head coach Dean Everson and the organization had to go through in order to allow the players and the organization to properly grieve and process, because this happened in late August. And at the same time, you've got to strike that balance with trying to prepare for the new NHL season.
Yeah. When the tragedy happened, within a couple of days, our captain, our leadership group really tried to get everybody to come to town. And we had almost everybody here within 3 days just to be together. And that was obviously before training camp had started. We had, some time in between when the funeral was going to be. And we all know everybody grieves differently. But one thing we know is hockey players are human beings, and being around each other, being a team sport, it is the best thing, I think, for a lot of these guys. And so, we made different through the NHLPA, through our own doctors, and there's people available, whoever want to talk to them. Obviously, we didn't need to know about it. Everybody, like I said, everybody grieves differently. But I think the biggest thing is every day those guys came to the rink, they worked out, they're going to dinner. They're just being around each other. And I think that was important because, some guys are married, some guys aren't. And I think having everybody become one, and I think that's really helped us. By the time training camp came and we got the funeral was behind us, and that these guys were a close-knit group. Usually training camp, you try to do some building things to help bring all the new players together. But by that time, even though we did a few things, this group had already started forming a nice bond, and you could see it within the locker room.
At what point during the start of the season did you feel that this team was truly gaining traction and that this just wasn't, an initial adrenaline piece, reacting and playing well out of the gate? But now it appears, as you had said, we are into the final third of the season, and this is clearly sustainable.
Yeah, I spent more time around the locker room than I probably normally did. Obviously, travel with the team every place. And, I don't know if there's any measuring stick, but I probably thought after the first 10, 15 games, it would be tough to maintain it. That's, I said earlier about, I kept waiting for the bubble to burst. The bubble never burst. And again, as I was around every day and talking to the guys and seeing their interactions with each other, they're playing for each other. I mean, they're playing for Johnny, of course. We're not going to forget about that, but they're playing for each other. They're proud human beings, and proud human beings that play together, and you bring good people together, have a better chance of having success together. And I think that's truly been the case with our hockey club.
You and I both played defense, so I have to ask you about a defenseman. Werenski has been absolutely phenomenal this season, and he was again in the Four Nations. Tell us about him, because I know this is a guy you didn't know before this year, because you're a new GM with that team, and although you'd seen Werenski from afar from Carolina, you didn't know him like you do now.
Yeah, I got to know him a little bit back in the World Junior days when I was doing a lot of stuff for USA Hockey. But as you said, Neil, I've got to know him this year. And you want to talk about a player that cares. His stats are one thing, but he cares about one thing, and that's winning. And, he told me at the beginning of the year, they've had some tough years here, as you talked about before. He just wants to win, and he's going to do everything in his possibility to make that happen. And I can't say enough good things, obviously. Excuse me, his on the ice performance is one thing, but off the ice, he's been even better for us as a team and a leader.
I got a quick thing, too, that I want to bring up now that you said that, how badly he wants to win. Was the Laine comment a motivating factor for your team? Sort of like bulletin board stuff that you put up in the locker room?
When those things happen, I leave that to the players. Certainly, I know it was talked about. It was talked about in the media. Players, again, going back, players are proud. They're proud about being in the NHL, and they know what they've gone through in the past. And they had some tough years, but it's not because they didn't care about each other, didn't work hard. And so when you have a player come out like that, I can understand why our players got a little upset about it. So, to me, I leave that to the players. Management, coaches, we stayed out of it. Because it was really a direct shot at the players.
Donnie, the deadline's coming up, and although the deadline is not like it used to be, because a lot of moves get made well in advance of the deadline, but is there any areas that you might want to upgrade or do something? And I'm not asking you what are you looking for, but do you plan on doing some things before the deadline?
Yeah, this, to be honest, and this is what we've been trying to accomplish. If we got to be careful where we're at with our franchise. We've everything's gone well this year, but we've certainly can miss the playoffs. And if we made the playoffs, who knows how far you're going to go. So, we're at a point of our franchise where we just can't be giving up big assets for rental players. I said, if I could add a scorer at a price that, because we have lots of draft picks, we got a lot of young players, then that's something we're going to do. On the flip side, we also have to protect our assets going forward. So we have quite a few unrestricted guys. To trade guys for a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick doesn't make any sense. But if somebody comes along with a package for one of our unrestricted guys, that's really going to help us down the road. We got to make sure we not get caught up in the moment and manage our assets the right way moving forward.
You guys certainly are in a position to control your own destiny. You're technically in the 3rd wild card position as of this morning, but you are tied with Ottawa with 62 points. The only difference being the regulation win category. But you've got 3 games left with the Senators, 2 with Detroit, 2 with the Rangers, and 2 with the Islanders. So if nothing else, you're certainly positioned to take care of business yourself without having to rely on other clubs.
No, you're right. We got Detroit twice this week. So Thursday, Saturday, home and home. Ottawa, we don't see until the end of the year. I think we played them 3 times of our last 8 or 9 games. So by that time, we'll have a better understanding of where we are. But you're correct. We all scoreboard watch. I'd be lying if I said I don't watch the scoreboard. But we have to win games. If just because the team that we're playing, chasing with loses tonight, it doesn't mean anything unless we win our next game. So, we got to take care of our own business. And, we've been really good at home this year. Our record at home has been outstanding. We have 4 games. There are 3 games this week, and then we go on a 4-game road trip, and then our schedule really becomes favorable at home. So I've always said on these road trips, we went on a 4-game trip right before the break, and we had to go to Vegas, Utah, Dallas, and Buffalo. And you're saying if you go 500, you'd be happy about that. We go in Vegas, we win. We go in Utah, we win. We go in Dallas and lose, and we lose in Buffalo. So by the time you won the first 2, you're thinking, oh, can we sneak one of these other ones out of here? So, the old saying, we can stay around 500 on the road and take care of business at home. We're going to put ourselves in pretty good shape coming down the stretch drive here.
Don, your home record is 18-6-4 on the year, but perhaps no more special a game than what's coming up this weekend on Saturday, the NHL Stadium Series, your closest rival geographically aside from Pittsburgh, the Detroit Red Wings, playing the Blue Jackets at Ohio Stadium, a capacity just a little less than 103,000. And considering everything the team has gone through this year, you were the feel-good story of the NHL. The ratings for the Four Nations hopefully carry over, because what a showcase opportunity for the Columbus Blue Jackets Saturday night.
100% agree. Playing at a historic stadium, the Shoe, national championships in football this year. You can't write a better script for it. We've talked about this all year. Everybody's excited about it. What we have to contain is we got 2 games before that. Saturday, we'll have a fun day at the Shoe, doing practice, family skates and all that. We'll meet with the players that night. And Saturday's all business. The great thing about these games are the NHL puts on a tremendous event. The event's going to be outstanding. The weather's going to be great, but the game is really important because it's 2 big points. So we got to make sure. And I think that's great for the fans too, by the way. It's not like a game that doesn't mean anything. This means a lot. So we're real excited about it. We're over 85,000 tickets now. They've cut some seats out for the bands and all that stuff, but it's going to be electrified in there. And I've been over there multiple times this last week looking at the setup and that. And unfortunately, I was just in it 2 years ago in Carolina. And again, I'll go back. The NHL, how they put these events on, are tremendous. And the entertainment they got planned, 21 pilots, this is, I can't say enough about it. I've told people, if you ever want to go to an event, you have this opportunity, a big event, you don't want to miss this one.
Don, you and Dean Evison are doing a great job. We shouldn't leave that out. I mean, it's early in your time in Columbus, but obviously it takes a good coach and a good manager to also help the good group you have that's helping you get this part of the season. Remind everybody how many years you're with the Hurricanes.
10 years, last 6 years as president and GM. First 4 years as president, last 6 years.
So I have to ask you, because you're known for the Hurricanes. I mean, obviously you've got the logo on your jacket now, but you're known for the Hurricanes and the building of the Hurricanes and the great years you had there. What are your thoughts about that big trade they pulled off during the season? I'm just going to tell you, I was stunned when I saw it. And I just wonder what you think.
Yeah, I think we were all surprised. Obviously, those kind of trades, if you're going to make them, they have to be kept quiet because the names are too big to get out there in the media. So both Carolina and Colorado did a great job of keeping it. Rantanen is one of the top 5, 6, 7 players in the league. And for Colorado standpoint, obviously the cap becomes in, everything becomes in, and they got a great player back in Necas. I had Necas for 6 years there. So, to me, it's a win-win for both teams. Now you take it to the next step. What happens for both teams going forward? Colorado, obviously, they're battling right now to make sure they stay afloat in the playoffs, which I'm sure they will because they got great players there. Carolina's talking about re-signing. It's just stuff I read in the paper. Success, we went to the Eastern Conference Finals twice in Carolina, but couldn't get over that hump. This Rantanen and give them that opportunity to put them in a better spot to move forward. So when you look at those kind of trades, I mean, it's a big trade, and I think it's potentially could really work out for both teams very well.
Well, we had Trip Tracy on the show a month ago, Vic, I think it was, perhaps. And he had great things to say about his old friend, Don Waddell. So you should know that your ears were probably burning because he had some really nice things to say. And what a terrific interview he is, too. What a terrific guy Trip Tracy is.
You probably asked one question. He went on for 45 minutes with his answer because Trip gets on. No, Trip is hilarious because, first of all, I don't know all the broadcasters in the business. I can only speak about Trip. He works his butt off at his job. He knows players. He knows everything going on. He told me things that said, how the heck does he know that? And soon enough, they become true. So I always give credit to people that work at their job and care about their job. And he's certainly one of them. And then I know the people in Carolina love Tripp and Tripp stories, because he's got stories that I don't know where they come from, but they're all true. But no, Tripp's one of the best.
And he happened to be talking about Jack Drury, and of course the Islanders were playing against Jack Drury right away, and with his new team, and Ted was at the game, and I got a chance to mention that to Ted. And that was a fun night too, because they all played together, Ted and Tripp, and at Harvard. So, anyways, he was really fun to have on. We're hoping that we can do it again, because as you said, Vic and I don't have to do any work. We just say, well, Tripp, how are you today? And okay, we got to wrap.
Tripp can talk. He's one of the best. He sends me texts almost like at least once a week about he's got a new dog he got a couple of years ago, and tell me what's going on in his life. And it's always great to hear from him.
And then the other guy we had on that, because he's been around so long that you could do the same thing with, was Chico Resch.
Oh, boy.
We had Chico on, and all you got to do is, hey, Chico, how you doing? And okay, the show's over.
Chico, we shared a lot of stories because we're both in old cars and stuff like that, and antiques and that. So we've had some great conversations about that for sure. Good man, very good.
Well, continued good luck the rest of the way. And Saturday, I hope you have a great event and you have a lot of fun and your family enjoys it. And I'm just couldn't be happier for you than I am, and for that matter, for the whole organization, but particularly my old Northern Michigan friend. And I wish you continued success the rest of the season. And thanks for doing this.
Oh, of course, always a pleasure to be with you, Neil and Vic. So we're going to keep going and try to see how we can end on a positive note here. But I always appreciate you guys having me on.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder that our website is NHLWraparound.com. We will be back on Tuesday with New York Centric and short shifts Wednesday and Friday of this week. And also remember that we've got a trade deadline special coming up on Friday, March 7th. That'll be late in the afternoon once all the deals are signed, sealed, and delivered. Neil, Don Waddell is the first guest that we have had that has joined us, being with two separate teams, being the Carolina Hurricanes last year and Columbus this year. And it's just remarkable how different the scenarios were in his two appearances.
Yeah, it is. But still, obviously the same great guy, and has walked into a situation in Columbus that when he started his job, doesn't get any worse than what he ran into and faced with the Gaudreau situation, and then the Boone Jenner injury, and then other things that have happened. But he picked the right guy to coach. Obviously, Dean Evason's doing a great job. And as I said to him, I know, I'm being honest with him, we're all cheering for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
One of the things that you had asked him about was the deal between Carolina, his former team, and the Colorado Avalanche, with the Hurricanes acquiring Mikko Rantanen. Now, Rantanen was offered a contract extension, numbers being talked about as being in the $100 million in total range. He has struggled with the Canes so far. A goal, 2 assists in just 7 games. And upon receiving this offer, he has said he needs more time to think about accepting this offer. As a GM, you've got the trade deadline coming up a week from Friday. Can you afford to give him the necessary time to let you know whether he intends to re-sign, or do you have to flip him in another deal?
Well, as a GM, you do, but as an owner, you can do whatever you want. And Tom Dundon is controlling this whole thing. He's the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes. And it's my belief that there's no way they would trade Rantanen no matter what is said. They're going to hold on to him, and they're going to go for it and see if they can get to the Holy Grail, the Stanley Cup, and then worry about it later. I just don't think there's any way that they'll move him again. At this point, I think he's there for the rest of this year.
But isn't there a fear that they could run into the same situation as they did with Jake Gensel a year ago? They got Gensel from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh winds up not re-signing and then heading down to Tampa. And could we be seeing a repeat here?
I think we could. Yeah, I think we definitely could. But again, Vic, if I'm the president and GM of Carolina and all the pressure is on me to do the right thing for the organization, yes, you're absolutely right. You're in fear of the Gensel thing. You're in fear of losing him for nothing, all these things. But if I own the thing, I can do whatever I want. And I don't have the pressure on me because I own it. So I just think it's a wild card what Tom Dundon will do in this situation with Rantanen. I think he'll try as he can to sign him, but if he can't, he'll live with that, just like he did with Gensel.
Let's bring things back onto the ice. Sunday, we had two incidents with shoulders to the head and two very different results the way things were called on the ice. In Detroit, Trevor Zegras hit Michael Rasmussen shoulder to head, and the head was the primary point of contact. And this was a good second after Rasmussen had released the puck. Yet 4 officials on ice, nobody saw it. Casey Cizikas went into the corner with Leon Bichel of the Dallas Stars at a game that you attended at UBS Arena last night. From where I was sitting and I watched this game, I saw it happen live. It looked like two players competing for space, and the shoulder did come up. It clipped Bichel, and Cizikas wound up with a match penalty. And those 2 goals that Dallas scored on the ensuing power play wound up deciding the game. Of course, that and a disallowed goal for goaltender interference at the end of the game. But I think that's the thing that drives fans crazy, is that you had a very obvious hit to the head that wasn't called, and somewhat that was perhaps a little less obvious, and it results in a match penalty.
Well, I wasn't watching the Detroit game, but so answer me this. Did they call a penalty on the play?
No penalty.
Okay, so there's the difference. In New York, they immediately were calling a penalty on the play. They saw it and they were calling it. And so then they could review it and they could get it right. Don't forget, they went over to the penalty box and watched that thing on video. Now, if they weren't calling a penalty on Zegras, they don't get a chance to go and review it. So yeah, you're right. They all missed it, but it's not the same. It's not exactly the same. It's not like if Zegras had been getting a penalty, they went to the penalty box, reviewed it, and said, no, it's not a hit to the head. And yet, you said, well, this is every bit as bad as what Cizikas did.
I thought it was worse.
Yeah, but you can't. But you're watching it on TV.
Well, I watched both on TV, and I thought if I'm putting them side by side, Zegras was clearly worse.
But you can't put them side by side because you're not on the ice. It's the guy on the ice saw the Cizikas hit. The guys on the ice didn't see the Zegras hit. So you can't scream at the TV because those guys aren't watching it on TV. The officials are watching it in real time. So you can't, once they miss it, you can't then come back and say, well, that one's worse than the other one. Well, it might be, but they missed it.
Well, let's see what the Department of Player Safety has to say, because Cizikas obviously will have his case reviewed because of the match penalty. And Zegras is indeed going to have a hearing with the Department of Player Safety. The NHL is going to hold a decentralized draft in Los Angeles. It was just announced that this will take place June 27th and 28th at the LA Live Peacock Theater. This will be a similar setup to what the NFL and the NBA have done in many previous years, with teams operating from their team headquarters. Gary Bettman will be announcing all of the first round picks. My understanding is that there will be several prospects that will be present with Bettman in Los Angeles. It is possible that this could become a centralized draft at some point in the future, but nothing is extravagant as 2024, which was held in the Sphere in Vegas at what Bettman has said was enormous cost. But Neil, even before I knew you, and I think we met in 1990 for the first time, I had seen you at many a draft table before that. And I think as a scout and then later as a GM, you really enjoyed that in-person component to the NHL draft.
I did. And I'm saddened by the fact that they're not going to do this the way we've always done it. I've been going to the NHL draft since Dennis Potvin was first overall. And I saw that in the Queen Elizabeth Hotel, I believe, is where that one was
in Montreal.
Held. In Montreal, yeah.
Yep.
And I've been going to them all in the WHA days. Of course, they stopped. They did a secret draft because they didn't want the WHA to get the names that they had and things like that back in the 70s. But the point is this was a great meeting of all teams could get together, and it's the only place you ever saw the staffs of all the other teams all in one place at one time. And the roots of it go back, and like the fact that the general manager won't get to walk up onto the stage and announce the pick for the team. It saddens me because that was such a big part of doing the draft. And before they walked up on the stage, by the way, we did first overall in 1986 with Joe Murphy. That was done from the table. That was not done from a podium. And then when Gary Bettman came in, I believe is the first time they had a stage and you'd walk up onto the stage and do it. But now it's just going to be like the NBA and the NFL, which I think is, I don't like it. I to be honest with you, I don't like it. I know, it's going to be, Neil, would you want to have to pay for it? Because it's very expensive to bring everybody to one place, and the cost is insane. Travel, hotels, meals, all the rest of it. I get it. It just saddens me because I'm a traditionalist, and I like thinking back to how it was in the Montreal Forum. Because remember, Vic, it used to be in the Montreal Forum every year. They didn't really move it around. Too bad. I guess that's the way of the world. Things change, and you've got to accept it.
Steve Mayer heads up the special events for the NHL. He will be doing the Stadium Series game on Saturday, and he is also going to be putting this event together. And it'll be very interesting to see, coming off of the Sphere, which was just sensory overload with the spectacular visuals there, how this comes off this year, how it's received, and realistically, what the future for the NHL draft will be.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. And that last year, the Sphere, I was there. As you said, it was sensory overload, but you still had all the players there, all their parents there, all the agents there, all the teams there. And now you'll go the opposite now and have, I guess you'll have 40 first round picks, prospects there, because you're going to want to have the player come up and meet the commissioner and get a jersey and so on. It'll be interesting to watch. And I know that they're, you can still go and see it live as a fan or as an observer, but it won't be the same. You won't get to, I don't know. I guess each team will have to do a little bit of a press conference as it goes on from their home headquarters.
I'll be home watching in my printed Hawaiian shirt.
Yes. Well, that's good that you're not out in public.
No, well, I'll be in public. We'll be doing a show in July. I'll be wearing it. So anyway, from prospects to current player notes, and there's a lot of significant stuff going on. Matthew Tkachuk out Saturday versus Seattle. This injury was suffered in the Four Nations, groin injury. Paul Maurice has said we expect him back at some point, but it certainly doesn't appear imminent. And his brother Brady was out on Saturday in their loss against Montreal, lower body injury. He is hopeful to play Wednesday against Winnipeg. But as we had mentioned long before the tournament started, this was going to be a pain point for GMs on the back end of this tournament. And here we see the brothers both suffering injuries.
Yeah, both of them are out. And also the son-in-law of Mike Sullivan, the coach of the Team USA and the coach of Pittsburgh Penguins, but coaching Charlie McAvoy, who plays for the Boston Bruins. Interesting combination there. Mike Sullivan's son-in-law playing for Mike Sullivan, but in the National Hockey League plays an important role for the Bruins. And the Bruins were mad at Team USA for the treatment that Charlie McAvoy got. It's really intriguing. There was a number of injuries, but we talked before this thing started about significance of it and how it could significantly impact the teams. Now, Matthew Tkachuk and his Florida Panthers are making the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. Brady Tkachuk and his Ottawa Senators is a whole different case. I mean, they've got to win their games to stay in that wild card spot, and so that if he misses any more time, that's very significant.
It is. And you just mentioned Charlie McAvoy, so I'm just going to jump ahead on our list, and then we'll wind up coming back. But Hampus Lindholm, defender for the Boston Bruins, expected to be out for the rest of the season with a knee injury. His last game was November 12th. So in addition to Charlie McAvoy, and who knows when, if at all, he'll come back this year, Don Sweeney's in quite a bind here because they lost in overtime to Anaheim. They are fourth in the wild card. They've played more games than anybody else. And this is a real crossroads for this Bruins team that set records just 2 years ago.
And last year had a phenomenal season. Really, when you think about, they lost Krejci and Bergeron. Sorry, easy for me to say, and yet still had a real good regular season. And now this year, they've had a flat tire all year long. And they're not going to make the playoffs as far as I'm concerned. I've been saying that for quite a while. I just don't think they got the goods to make the playoffs.
Quinn Hughes, who we had thought might even come over and try to play in the final game for the U.S. in the Four Nations tournament, missed both games. Losses for the Canucks in Vegas and in Utah. Chris Kreider, forward for the Rangers, missed the win in Pittsburgh with an upper body injury, and this was announced after taking warmups, said that he couldn't go. In that same game, Penguins defenseman Matt Grzelcyk left the game after being hit by Matt Rempe. Tell me when you've heard this before.
Yeah, and Rempe's lucky he didn't get a bigger penalty on that play. He's just such a big guy that he's got to learn how to hit without taking penalties. I mean, Zdeno Chara had to learn the same thing. You can't just go in there and reckless abandon when you're 10 feet tall.
No. Also, John Gibson, goaltender for Anaheim, left Saturday's overtime win in Boston after the second period. Lucas Dostal came in for the win. He also had the overtime loss in Detroit on Sunday. Gibson is listed as day-to-day, and if Anaheim is looking to potentially move Gibson, since they're really on the outside looking in the Western Conference, having his status updated is going to be crucial as to whether or not general manager Pat Verbeek is going to be able to make a trade.
Just a comment. I don't think that Gibson will get traded.
And Neil, you'll be providing your list of 15 players that either will or won't be traded. We'll probably reveal those next Monday or Wednesday in advance of the trade deadline. A couple of other notes. Don Waddell had mentioned Boone Jenner finally returned, first game of the season on Saturday against Chicago. He had been out since training camp with a shoulder injury. Kirill Marchenko only wound up missing 3 games with that broken jaw that he suffered sitting on the bench. So this is one guy, Neil, that was actually truly benefited from the break.
Absolutely. And when you say the break, you mean the break in the games, not the break of the jaw.
Both.
Yes. No, I mean, it's amazing that he's back sitting on the bench, gets hit with a slap shot on February 2nd, and misses 3 games. But that's a hockey player.
So talk about a couple of other hockey players. Jordan Eberle returned from an unprecedented pelvic injury that is actually common to rugby players. They've never seen the type of injury that Eberle had on a hockey player. He suffered the original injury against Chicago on November 14th and played both games this weekend in Florida and Tampa, which the Kraken split. And then Nico Hischier, the captain of the Devils, returned from a 6-game absence against Dallas on Saturday, and he had 3 assists in the 5-0 win against Nashville on Sunday. And finally, Kevin Lankinen signed a 5-year extension with the Canucks, average at $4.5 million per year. This is a guy that took a flyer and signed a 1-year deal on September 21st for $875,000. Lankinen has really been one of the truly key components as to why the Canucks are still in wild card position. Thatcher Demko on the IR.
Absolutely. Good for him. Good for Kevin Lankinen, who was also in the Four Nations tournament playing for Team Finland.
This is the human side of the story, and we're going to be talking different sides of humanity on display shortly. But first, want to go back to last week's human side, where we talked about Paul Morris, the longtime public address announcer for the Maple Leafs. And I had said that he was succeeded by Red Barber, which actually was correct, except it was not the Red Barber known for calling games for Major League Baseball. And I thank listener George Grimm for pointing that out, that according to Leafs historian Kevin Shea, the baseball Red Barber was a legend. The hockey Barber did the job as PA announcer, but drinking ultimately cost him his job, enabling Paul Morris the opportunity to have his 38-year career as the public address announcer at Maple Leaf Gardens. So with that, Neil, we saw and have seen in recent weeks extraordinary humanity on behalf of so many around the NHL. Sunday was the skate for LA Strong, held at Crypto.com Arena, the home of the Los Angeles Kings. A mix of players, celebrities, and local first responders to the LA wildfires. Over 12,000 attendants, with tickets going to first responders and those displaced by the fires. And during the Four Nations tournament at the team dinner beforehand, Guy Gaudreau, Johnny Gaudreau's dad, was invited to join the team. Johnny's jersey was displayed in the locker room throughout the tournament, and also invited to that dinner 1980 Olympic heroes Mike Eruzione and Rob McClanahan were there, as was Mike Modano, from the 1996 World Cup of Hockey USA Championship team. And on Saturday, at the Chicago-Columbus game, a happy birthday wish was sung to Gaudreau's 1-year-old son, Johnny Jr. And the point that we're really making here is it's not that baseball and football and basketball don't do nice tributes to people, but kindness and remembering tradition is just such an unbelievable piece of the fabric and mindset of hockey people.
Absolutely is. And it's something that you get used to and be a part of when you get into hockey and into the National Hockey League especially. And the National Hockey League, like the other sports, do make a lot of money, and the players make a lot of money. The executives, coaches, everybody makes money. But they also give back, and they enjoy giving back, and they enjoy, doing the right thing, as you say, all the time. And the things that have been done for Guy Gaudreau and the Gaudreau family have been phenomenal, as they should be. But the way Team USA embraced Johnny Gaudreau and putting his jersey in the locker room the entire tournament, and then even Mike Eruzione coming out with Gaudreau's jersey on to out there with Wayne Gretzky to do the two flags that were given to each side. This is class. It's all class stuff. I mean, the Skate for LA Strong is a class act. The LA Kings changed their center ice logo from the Kings logo to the Firefighters LA Strong logo. So it's all stuff that is great. It's good. It should be done, and it is done. And things are rarely forgotten in the NHL to do the right thing. It's always the right thing. It usually gets done. I've been to some games where I've said, geez, I wonder why they didn't recognize the death of so-and-so. They should have. But those instances where they forget or don't do it is far and few between, as compared to when they always seem to do the right thing. And that's every organization, not just one in particular, but I'd say it goes across the 32 teams.
Sunday Skate for LA Strong was the brainchild of Kings president Luc Robitaille, who we had on as a guest as the fires were burning literally around him.
Yep. How scary must that be?
It is just remarkable that given the ferocity and intensity that games are played at, that the compassion level in hockey runs so remarkably deep.
It really is. And it just goes to show you what's always talked about by people. When there used to be real fighting in the league, you'd see two tough guys go at it. And then later you'd see them talking in the hallway because they knew they got to do what they got to do. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to respect the other guy. They always came out of it with respect for the other guy.
It's one of the aspects of hockey that continues to marvel me, even after watching this many years, and I'm sure you as well.
No, it does. I'm very proud of that part of the game.
That will wrap up our show for today. Special thanks to Columbus Blue Jackets president of hockey operations and GM Don Waddell. Thanks to UBS Financial Services, Inc. NHL Wraparound and UBS Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated. UBS is a sponsor of 3 things you need to pay attention to. No other affiliation, relationship, or endorsement is made, suggested, intended, or should be implied or inferred between UBS and VNS Productions, LLC, or any of the individuals or businesses and or their respective products and services appearing in this program. Thank you to our listeners. Send questions or comments to nhlwraparound@gmail.com. But if you want to reach out to me or Neil individually, we are at Neil@nhlwraparound.com or Vic@nhlwraparound.com. Reminder that all of our podcasts are on all platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, and our complete catalog can be found on our website, NHLWraparound.com. So please subscribe and check out some of our shorter clips on X at NHL Wraparound. Tuesday, we'll be back with New York Centric. Wednesday and Friday, we have short shifts. Neil, anything before we let our folks go today?
No, I just hope that people pass on the show to others that might enjoy it and subscribe. And we're always looking to get our numbers up, but we're not going to stop. So just like us, subscribe, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
We sure will. We're going to keep it coming.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.